Hello, good morning. Just going to wait for a few people to log in. But first of all, good morning. Welcome to the MSP webinar with Jamf, presented by our friend Yanis. We're going to be breaking the black box. Looking forward to learning all about that. So I'm Aaron. I'm with the MSP and the SITS team. And yeah, while everyone's joining, we're just going to run through a couple of points just to ensure you all get the most out of the session. So the webinar will be available to watch back. It's going to be on our website from tomorrow if you miss anything, so you can easily access that and share. That would be amazing across your socials. And of course, we encourage you guys to ask questions. So put them in the Q&A box and that we'll deal with them as a team. Yannis will be able to answer them. So yeah, questions are good. We like that. And yeah, I think we're looking good to go. So I'm just going to pass over to Yanis. Hello, Yanis.
Thanks, Aaron.
My pleasure.
So we can start. Okay, so
Go for it.
welcome. Yeah, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. I am quite excited with delivering today's session, in which we will be exploring how MSPs in the Apple ecosystem can break away from what we'll call the black box, the traditional reactive break-fix approach, and instead deliver a more transparent and user-centric set of services that will help them scale and deliver a much richer user experience. Now, I have thought quite hard about how to best introduce such a session, which is all about rethinking established practice. I think this quote from William McDonough, one of the pioneers of green architecture, captures the spirit of the session quite well. And yes, the Stone Age did not end because we ran out of stones. It was about taking that next step. And really, the quote and the session, by and large, is not really about technology alone. It is also about mindset. And it does remind us really that real progress doesn't come from hitting limits. It comes from rethinking what's possible, even when what we have still works on the surface. And that's really what we're going to try and capture today. We're not saying, and I'm not saying that the existing MSP model, which has worked for a number of years really well, is broken beyond repair or anything like that. But what I am going to unpack for you is a position that says that it is increasingly becoming misaligned from the outcomes we want to deliver in a modern social technology-led way of working. And what we need, if what we need is scale, transparency, and a great user experience. So I've also been thinking about which perspective I personally bring into the session. And over the past 20 years, and a little bit about me, I've been lucky enough to see the Apple ecosystem transform from three very distinct and different vantage points. As a customer of just over 15 years in IT, I experienced how Apple effectively enriched the user experience through macOS, iPhone, the introduction of iPhone and iPad, and all of the other innovations that Apple brought in, pretty much transformed mobility in the workplace and in education. I did learn how difficult it can be to deliver an excellent Apple user experience as you try to scale because of Apple's inherent interest in the consumer side of things. As an MSP leader, I was lucky enough to be part of a really innovative and fast-paced organization. And I did experience firsthand what it takes to rethink how a managed service should be delivered and scale, keeping a consistent user experience to several hundred environments and over 100,000 devices. Fast forward, and now as a strategist at Jamf, I lead efforts to build tools that make that work easier, more transparent, more impactful for our channel partners, and always with the user experience in mind. Now, this is quite a broad lens, and it gives me a deep understanding of what works and what doesn't, and also what's possible. But I wanted to keep what is constant throughout these three perspectives, and that is that user experience. And hey, if it worked for Steve, it can work for us. And more specifically, we're going to focus on the experience of an often forgotten user persona for software vendors when you design a product, which is the managed user. And Jamf does actually have that user experience embedded firmly within its history. It has been one of the trusted leader in Apple management security for over 20 years, with a very broad portfolio and also a very broad customer base of 70,000 plus users across all segments, education, enterprise, and government. And building Apple solutions that bring management, security, and identity in an integrated platform. Now, on MSP specifically, we have over 700 MSPs registered globally, and they are supported by a dedicated partner enablement team in a platform that is API rich and really quite malleable. Jamf has invested in MSP significantly, and case in point is the acquisition of DataJar in 2023, where we came into the business to deepen the technical collaboration and product capabilities that the platform and the company already had. So, what does that mean and for our session? Now, I have to say that this session I also designed in a way where you will see quite a lot of content on the screen on purpose, because usually I do like to have minimal slides with a lot of delivery, but that then becomes difficult to use that content later. And I wanted this session to be something that you can take away and use as the content within it, use it as a framework or as reference. So we will start quite broad. We will start by looking at a high level and really unpack what this problem that I'm referring to is, and then we will go into a more focused technical content with a real life demo, if you will, or example of how that black box problem can be solved. Now, of course, this is not a product pitch. I am going to use the Jamf interfaces to showcase how we can address that. But of course, the same principles, the same framework that we will go through around platform service enablement and user experience can be applied with any product set. So what is the challenge? Well, the black box MSP model I'm referring to is the one where users have no visibility or control. They are effectively relying on calling someone and asking for something every time they need either information or a change or a fix in their environment. This can lead and does lead to MSPs finding challenges as they scale. And again, our experiences DataJar showed that it does come to a point where constantly adding humans to the mix, people, it does not scale. And then, of course, that then leads to a bad experience and a bad service value perception from the end customer, where they see the service as static, opaque, inflexible, and that can lead to churn. So what is the opportunity? Well, the opportunity is to build a more transparent and scalable user-empowered service. I know these are great words, but what does it mean in practice? Well, we want to be very, very refined, streamline support, improving that trust that we have between the MSP and the managed customer persona that I'm referring to. Also, we do want to be lowering costs through smart delegation automation. Ultimately, the efficiencies can help us improve the service. And there is a big role for data and if you will, insights into the service. And the more we can do, the more we can present that to the end user, the better the results, as I will be showing you. How are we going to do that? Well, at the beginning, as I said, we're going to approach this from a design perspective. And what are the three core areas we're going to look at is platform design to begin with, and then this idea of a product-led and service-enabled change, rethink of how MSP is delivered or managed services are delivered. And a very important part of that formula is the increased end user agency. We have to see the end user, that managed customer, as part of the delivery of that service, not as a consumer of a service alone. So a little bit, if we're going to start unpacking that black box challenge, well, as I've already said, it does really refer to the break, fix, and reactive MSP model. It tends to leave users in the dark. It overloads the support side of things on the MSP with simple tasks, and it does take away from the value. really, we can't break it down into points, bullet points like we did here. But broadly speaking, we can identify the experience-related challenges that this brings. The lack of ability to self-serve, the lack of visibility into devices and stats is something that I have seen being addressed by MSPs in different ways. And that's usually because the vendor leaves that space blank, and it's down to the MSP to then figure out a way to enable their customers. And most MSPs are not software development companies. Some are, and they do a really good job. And we approached it as DataJar in that way, and this is what we brought into Jamf. But really, in my opinion, this is for the vendor to solve. That's a problem for the vendor to solve. The MSP support teams, well, yes, handling repetitive and low-value tasks such as password unlocks. It will flood the service desk. It will lead to frustration. It is a difficult thing to maintain consistency on, and ultimately you get into this loop of not really improving the capabilities that you are providing to an end user, and just firefighting all the time. You then cannot scale. It becomes expensive, and again, the value becomes very difficult to communicate. The customers, and I'm sure that you've all had these conversations with customers where you have to explain, you have to justify even what it is that you do in the background for them. One example that I have is password resets, and I did some research on that. It's interesting that typically 30 to 50% of support calls are about password resets. And Okta did a study, and of course, that will always depend on the self-serve capabilities that you're putting into the hands of your end customers. But if you look at this specific example, with 56% of employees resetting at least one password monthly, especially in high compliance environments, and then the volume of help desk tickets that comes in, and in relation to what Forrester says the estimated cost per password reset, if you take everything into account, that becomes a very noisy, very expensive problem very quickly. So again, staying with this platform approach, what is this new perspective, and what are the key changes that in our perspective that we need to be thinking about? Well, I think I've already made enough references to this. We need to move from the opaque, the hidden, to the visible type of service, where things like device or environment statuses, actions, and outcomes are visible and available to the user. The reactive to proactive shift is something that I think every good service-driven company has always tried to foster and to achieve. This still is a very important component of this service-enabled approach, replacing ticket-driven support with data-driven automated experiences. I will show you in real life how that works later on in the session. And then from control to participation, this is an important one, because it can be difficult to balance, and it doesn't, of course, apply to all types of environments. There are different needs in SMB versus enterprise versus education, but what you do want at the very least, and seeing this from a software vendor's perspective, is you need to be equipped with the capability to make those decisions around how much you open the platform to an end user based on the level of skill, the needs, and the desire ultimately. And there is absolutely nothing wrong for someone to say, I want the MSP to do everything. That's fine, but that, in my experience, is not the majority of modern, let's say, IT-driven environments. Again, some stats that really provide a little bit more context here. 66% of users will try self-service first before contacting support. Actually, the 74% among younger users, I would say I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually more. I think more and more, and especially as we're used to being self-sufficient on our own personal devices, we are seeking for the same experience at work, and it can be frustrating when you don't get it. On the consumer side of things, of course, yes, 81% expect most of service options, but on the business side, you can see where that gap is and that disconnect is, with only 40% of businesses meeting this demand. And then the ability to solve issues independently, again, you see the overwhelming majority of customers want the ability to solve something themselves, and the assurance that there is someone that they can go to if they need to. This is the idea behind being product-led and service-enabled. As we're becoming more specific now about, okay, well, how do you do that? What is it that you need to do? And what is it that you need to do specifically differently compared to what it is that we are doing now? Well, again, we are focusing on three key principles here. The first one is build a platform. The shift between managing an environment and building a platform can make the difference when it comes to consistency, repeatability, and scale. The treating users as participants point, which I will keep repeating throughout this presentation, is really important, because on the one hand, in the traditional model, users are passive, but today's increasingly social, techno-social users expect visibility and agency. Now, by giving them scoped access, like I said, not to blanket for everyone, but having the ability to refine who gets what, to things like information and actions, MDM capabilities, or even just the ability to see what they have, we're not only reducing support volume, we're also building trust, we're building satisfaction, and ultimately a better overall experience. And this is really true. Participation does drive trust and satisfaction, not just in IT, but across everything. The service-enabled experience is now where we start changing what it is that we are, how rather it is we are seeing this concept of managed service. The idea is that the managed service is no longer something hidden behind the help desk. It's a shared experience. It combines product, support, automation, and insight. And it has to be tailored to the user. Ultimately, it is somewhere between doing it yourself and a traditional managed service. It's a hybrid approach. Let's start with the platform. Well, what is it? We keep saying, you hear the term platform everywhere, but what is it? And the truth is, there isn't. It is a term that is applied and used and applied in a variety of situations. You have physical platforms that help you get from A to B. They are in between steps to an action. You have movements that enable and empower people, so social platforms. You then have social media platforms that invite and, if I'm honest, in most cases, mandate participation. You don't want to be the only person on Facebook, for example. There's no value coming out of that. You have to have users who are also producers, consumers and producers. And then you have digital platforms, technology platforms that provide multi-sided value. The MDM space is a great example. You get value as a user, and the vendor gets value. The developers and owners of the applications get value through the data they're collecting, and so on. The interesting thing about platforms is that you can switch these around as much as you want, and these value points, the reason for why a platform works, exists and applies in every situation, whether it's physical platforms or social or technology. Now, unpacking the platform sort of principle a little bit more, the key points are, as I said, the platforms are you have to see a platform as a facilitator, not the destination. The platform has to exist in between the user and the service, the human and the technology. That's how you get the most value out of it. Now, digital platforms, specifically, which is what we're interested in here, are the so-called solid ground upon which IT is delivered, but you do need user participation. If you have a user that just consumes, they sit at the very end of the platform. They're not driving value back, and they're not getting as much value from the platform. well-designed platforms, and we have lots of examples from that. The Apple Developer Program, in my opinion, is one. The App Store, what it brought, the balancing of openness versus restriction, and for some people, the App Store is too restrictive, and for some others, it actually isn't enough because they care about the secure and defined user experience. That balancing act is something that we have to think about as we design a platform. If for those who are interested in really going deep, this is one of my go-to publications, which have been around for some time. And in fact, the modern social media sort of socially led, if you will, tech ecosystem has been based on quite a lot of the content in this book. And one of the key concepts that we have to think about as we're designing our own MDM focused managed service enabled platform is that core interaction. And the core interaction for us, for example, is MDM capabilities, self-service capabilities, things like being able to just pick up a device from anywhere and set it up without needing someone to do it for you if you're an end user. And we're thinking about the end user experience always. A core value unit, which is another term that helps you really define as you start breaking down, okay, if I want to build a platform, it will have these core interactions, and this is the value that someone's going to get out of it. For us, again, some obvious ones, the users being self-sufficient, being secure, having access to corporate resources. And then, of course, the other important thing, and these are the three things that we need to have a first design is, well, who does what question? What are the platform roles? What will the end user do? What will the service administrator do? What will a services engineer do? And so on and so forth. Customer success person, and so on. And then the other principle is this concept of the service-enabled experience. Now, this is something that was really important. It's really important for us at Jamf and was important even as an MSP at DataJar, which is to combine the autonomy of self-management with the skill and support of an MSP. Effectively, think of it as what happens when we stop choosing between the two extremes. The do-it-yourself on the one end, or fully handing everything off to an MSP into this opaque black box. So what we do is we create a shared platform where both the customer and the MSP participate through technology that is designed specifically for this purpose. The customer sees and understands what's happening, and this is very important, and they can act where it makes sense and escalate when they need help. Meanwhile, the MSP uses automation, platform logic, and tooling to scale that delivery and provide that proactive value. There is something that is very important, which is for us to understand how these again, let's call them personas or experiences interact, and also to define them. Engineering, and this is the people who are managing the MDM server and the integrations that go into the platform, for example, have to be able to have visibility into what happens when within the support space, which sits between the customer and the platform. And likewise, the customer has to be able to see what support has either performed as part of a request that they made, effectively creating that feedback loop. And this is now where we will start getting into the more technical side of things. Now, we'll build this out. And let's build, first of all, a platform. This is just one example of what can be done. But typically, you will have an IDP of sorts. Okta, for example, is one example. The connection with school manager, business manager is pretty much standard these days, as is the need for APNS. You may have some sort of EDR, something like, again, I'm going to be using examples from the Jamf portfolio, something like Jamf Protect, and anything else that you are integrating into your own platform stack based on how you've designed the delivery of your managed service to your users. Then what you will need is an MDM. In the way that at least Apple Device Management is delivered today. What I have here is I have a scenario where, again, let's assume we're using Jamf Pro. And we have two customers, customer A and customer B, but customer B has two sites. And these correspond to separate environments. As far as the customer is concerned, they are in different continents or for whatever reason, they want them segmented. Now, typically what happens is the service desk, so the customer-facing part of the MSP will interact with the end user, the customer, on an individual request basis. They have to react depending on what is being requested, and their starting point will always be the same. They will have to find the right environment and interact with systems engineering if this is something that needs to be escalated, or have the right skills and knowledge to be able to go into the MDM environment themselves or anywhere in the platform and act. Then they have to feedback that to the customer, who is effectively a consumer. They have expressed a need and they are waiting to hear what happened. So this is not necessarily wrong, but it is something that does not scale very well. And it is what I propose is really at the heart of the black box problem. Now, how does the service-enabled model look differently? Well, the platform is still designed in the same way because this is what we have available to ourselves. But we are making two key changes in the way we are approaching the, let's say, personas here. Support is now changed into a service delivery mode. So we need to give them agency, and we need to make this easier for them. And we want to also change, as we said earlier, the role of the end user from being a consumer, so just someone that waits while someone else does something, to an active participant in the delivery of that service. So we're changing them to becoming a service administrator. And we want to lead with product here. So we want a product and a product-led service-enabled experience. So we will use as an example Jamf Insights, which is the MSP-facing tool that we've developed. And with Insights, what we have is, because it's multi-tenanted, it is a tool that it doesn't affect how you've designed your platform. Everything you've done so far, specifically if you have a large, let's say, Jamf Pro environment, it will stay the same. But with Insights, what it is you do is you are providing this single pane of glass for the service delivery side of the business to be able to just go to one place and get very quickly information and be able to collect information across tenants and so on. Now, how that changes for the service administrator is we also have the MSP has the ability to segment their environment in any way it makes sense for the end customers and present effectively an MDM interface customized to the needs of the customer or even down to the person in a simplified way. So what we have here in this example is we have already, instead of waiting for our customers to just call us, we've already provisioned them with access to this experience. And customer A has an admin view, let's say, and customer B has two different views. So one person is an admin, and then we have everyone else who is an auditor and can see things, but they can't actually quite do anything. So they're there for reporting purposes. And also, they can see both environments. Now, what changes here is we have really broken that linear starting from the customer end all the way to the support and then platform side way of communicating. And everything is bi-directional. So we have the ability, we're giving the ability to the service administrator to perform actions without needing necessarily to contact the service delivery teams. However, if they do perform any actions, if they send any NPM commands, the service delivery team will have visibility to that, as also will the systems engineering side of things, because ultimately it is the platform that is still powering everything. Insights is not a separate MDM. It is an interface that provides a different experience and perspective into that environment. This is what it looks like when you design in it, but let's see a real life scenario and you will see exactly what I mean. So we have some fictional people. We have Freddie, who is an office manager, and he is the service administrator in our service-enabled managed service. Freddie has no technical background and no access to the platform. And as the MSP help desk is offline, he gets a request from Frank, the CEO, who forgets their password and they need the file vault key. Now, this is a very typical request, and it does require normally escalated access to the interface. We're going to use Jamf Pro and Jamf Insights for this example, as I said, but effectively the principles are the same. The product set can be whatever it is you want to use. So this is the MSP view. And what you can see is the MSP setting up the organization and the business's football, supplies, and co. In Insights. And this is what we're seeing now. So we're setting up the organization with an instance, and we're going to create an instance. What we're doing now is we're linking to the existing MDM instance. And we have an easy way to provision demo instances, and we will do that, which of course means that the data will be generated. We're not going to be looking at real devices, but the way the product behaves is exactly the same. So we are spinning up a demo instance with 100 devices, and now we want to go in and add Freddie as the service administrator, which again can be done very quickly from here. And having done that, the next step is to decide what that experience will look like for Freddie. So we are scoping which organization and which instances within that organization Freddie can see, and also what his role will be. We have an auditor, so read-only access preset, but we can customize that further. So we removed certain things that we don't want him to see, and we've also added the one capability, which is to retrieve the file vault key for that set of instances, for that set of environments. That's it. We can go back to the dashboard. You can see that we have multiple instances there. We can select a single one, and this is what we have done. So having now set that up, this is now the customer view, and this is what Freddie sees. And signing in will be done with the email address that we set up for him. But again, there are various options around SSO here if you want to configure, again, something like Okta, for example. And now you will see that what Freddie sees is something very different. You can only see one instance. It is very minimal, and you can only see the things that we've given him access to. So computers, for example, mobile devices, and again, play around with the interface depending on look and feel. Volume purchasing and automated enrollments. Now, in all of these, he has the ability to see and export data, but not to take any actions, except for one thing, and this is what he wants to do. He wants to find the CEO's MacBook, and the information is updated there on the right. To see whether anyone has actually retrieved the key, no, we can see a lapse password check that happened in the past. Okay, so now he has, you can see that button is not grayed out. He has the ability to retrieve the key. It says unknown because this is, like I said, the dummy record, but this is where you would see the key, be able to export it and send it. And that MDM history will record that action. Now, this action will also be seen by the service desk, and it will also be seen by the systems engineer who may log in specifically into Jamf Pro and can pick this up and retrieve that record or rotate the key or do whatever it is that is needed. So in summary, what did we see? And this is only one use case, and we could go on and we could just have a session about these use cases alone. Effectively, we have a non-technical user that did not need to contact anyone, was able to perform the task that he required through I would say, rich experience, an MDM-like experience that is service-enabled by the service desk. Now, when that MSP support desk comes online, they will be able to see what happened. They will be able to take action if required. And there is a full audit trail throughout, both on the customer end, as well as at service desk level, as well as at systems engineering level. And effectively, what we're trying to do with this model is as I said a few times, is empower the user without weakening that control. Now, control is always an important consideration when we are discussing managed services, because ultimately that balancing act that I mentioned can make the difference between a buying decision for an MSP, for a managed service, versus deciding that they would rather maintain control and embark upon that increase of skills and enablement in their own team, which isn't always the best thing to do. So I know that I've given you quite a lot in 35 minutes, and this is a big topic. It's worth doing a recap on some of the key takeaways. And really, the shift between a passive user with hidden value versus a product-led and service-enabled experience that empowers that user is really the biggest objective here. To get to that, we do need to start at the beginning. We do need to start at how it is we're designing that platform, what principles we are going to explore, that platform thinking, and we're going to employ, and then get to that user experience that we have set out to achieve in the first place. The results will be fewer tickets, happier users, and clearer value, and ultimately scale. Now, we wanted to leave some time for Q&A, and I will be happy to answer any questions, and I will also be happy to continue the conversation. There is, for those of you who are already partners, my contact details on the screen. If you're not a partner and you want to find out more, you can scan that QR code or go to partners.jamf.com. Thank you, and I will pass you back to Aaron for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Yanis. That was great. Thank you. That was really smooth. So yeah, is there any questions? That's the thing. Let me have a look. I love what you said at the beginning, Yanis, about if it worked for Steve. People, if you'd like to ask any questions, it looks like a few people are leaving. They're back to work. But please use the Q&A at the bottom, or contact Yanis directly. His information's there, as we said. Should we just sit here for a minute or two? If anyone wants to type anything, that would be great. Okay. Yeah. Yanis, I'm afraid you're
Okay.
no one wants to talk to you. You delivered such a good presentation. Thank you ever so much for being part of this, everyone. If you're still around, and yeah, it's a great presentation, and we'll see you very soon. Enjoy the sunshine.
Thank you.